My name is Rachel, I'm 26 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I used a 65-inch flat-screen TV to destroy my mother's reputation in front of our entire family. I watched the red wine hit the fabric in slow motion. It wasn't a splash or a spill. It was a deliberate, steady stream of dark red liquid soaking into the lace of my $5,800 wedding dress. The white silk went from pure and bright to looking like a fresh wound. The air in the bridal suite vanished. I couldn't breathe. I looked up at the person holding the glass. My mother, Linda, wasn't gasping. She wasn't reaching for a napkin. She was looking at me with a tiny, sharp smile that made my skin crawl. "Now we're both stained brides," she whispered. Her voice was as cold as the wine. Then she let out a little laugh and turned to the mirror to adjust her own dress. She was wearing white. You're not the silver gown I had paid $400 for. She was wearing a floor-length lace gown that looked exactly like mine. She stood there, a 50-year-old woman trying to look like the bride, while her only daughter stood ruined in the corner. Most daughters would have screamed. Most would have thrown her out. But I had spent 10 years being the good daughter. I had spent a decade convincing myself that her behavior was just an accident, or a quirk, or a mistake. I stood there shivering, my hands gripping the ruined fabric, and I let her ruin my day. That one moment cost me everything. The stress of that day, the humiliation of the photos, and the constant shadow of my mother eventually poisoned my marriage. 11 months later, I was signed, sealed, and divorced. My mother thought she had won. Boy, she thought she had successfully erased me and made herself the main character of my life forever. She thought I would keep her secret like I always did. She was wrong. She didn't know that my photographer had been standing in the hallway. She didn't know that his camera had been rolling the entire time. And she definitely didn't know that I had spent the last 3 weeks preparing the perfect Christmas present for her. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But a video is worth a lifetime of truth. I promised myself that by the time the sun went down on Christmas Day, the whole world would know exactly who Linda really was. The stain on my dress never came out. But I was about to make sure her reputation was permanently ruined. I wasn't always the woman who could stand up at a family dinner and expose her own mother. At 18, I was just a girl who wanted her mom to be proud of her. I didn't realize back then that for my mother, my success felt like her failure. The first time I really saw the mask slip was my high school graduation. I had worked so hard for 4 years. I was graduating with honors. I remember the excitement of picking up my cap and gown. The school had sent out a very strict letter to all parents. The dress code for the ceremony was black and white only. They wanted the focus to be on the students in their robes. I wore a simple white sundress under my black gown. I felt like an adult for the first time. When my mother walked out of her bedroom to leave for the ceremony, I stopped breathing. She wasn't wearing black. She wasn't wearing white. She was wearing a dress that was the color of a fire engine. It was bright, screaming red. It was tight, it was short, and it had a neckline that was completely inappropriate for a school event. "Mom," I whispered, my heart sinking. "The dress code is black and white. Everyone is going to be looking at you." She didn't look guilty. She looked in the mirror and fluffed her hair. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Rachel. I didn't see the letter. Besides, red is my color. Do you want me to look like I'm going to a funeral on your big day?" I spent my graduation ceremony watching people stare at her in the bleachers. In every photo of me holding my diploma, there is a bright red blur in the background. She made sure that even in my moment of achievement, the eye was drawn to her. She told everyone who asked that it was a silly mistake, but she said it with a smirk that told a different story. Then came my 21st birthday. That was the day I realized she didn't just want attention, she wanted to take things from me. I had saved up for months to have a small party at a nice restaurant. I bought a beautiful chocolate cake. When the waiters brought it out, the whole table started singing. I closed my eyes. I was making a wish for a happy future, for a good career, and maybe for a better relationship with her. I took a deep breath to blow out the candles. But before I could, I heard a loud whoosh of air right next to my ear. I opened my eyes. All the candles were out. Wisps of gray smoke were curling up from the wicks. My mother was leaning over the table, laughing and clapping her hands. "I beat you to it," she squealed. "I just couldn't help myself. I've always been faster than you." The table went quiet. My friends looked at each other, uncomfortable. My face went hot with shame. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to make a scene. I just forced a smile and said it was fine. I told myself it was just her personality. She was eccentric. She was high energy. I used every word I could find to avoid the word cruel. I wanted a mom so badly that I was willing to ignore the woman who was actually standing in front of me. I spent 10 years making excuses for her. I thought if I was just a better daughter, she would stop competing with me. I thought if I gave her enough love, she wouldn't feel the need to steal mine. I was wrong. Each time I forgave her, I was just giving her permission to go further. I was teaching her that she could ruin my moments and I would still be there, smiling and paying the bill. I didn't know it yet. But those silly mistakes were just the practice rounds. She was warming up for the biggest sabotage of all. The years between my 21st birthday and my wedding were a slow-motion car crash. My mother, Linda, didn't just want to be in the room, she wanted to own the room. And to own it, she had to make sure I looked small. When I was 23, I landed an interview for a high-level marketing firm. It was my dream job. The night before, I carefully hung my only professional suit on the back of my door. It was a crisp, navy blue blazer and matching trousers. I had spent 2 weeks' worth of grocery money on it. I woke up the next morning and the suit was gone. I panicked. I ran to the laundry room and there it was. My mother was standing over the washing machine, humming a tune. My navy blue suit was sitting in a bucket of bleach. The fabric was already turning a sickly, mottled orange. "Mom, what are you doing?" I screamed. She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Oh, honey, I thought I saw a stain on the sleeve. I wanted to make sure you looked perfect for your big meeting. I didn't think the bleach would act that fast." I had to go to my interview in an old sweater and jeans that didn't fit right. I spent the whole interview tugging at my sleeves, feeling like a failure. I didn't get the job. When I came home crying, she bought me a cheap tub of ice cream and told me, "Maybe you just weren't ready for that much responsibility, Rachel." 2 years later, my boyfriend Mark proposed. We had a small engagement dinner at a local Italian place with both our families. I was glowing. I was showing off my modest diamond ring, feeling like I was finally starting my own life. Halfway through the appetizers, my mother stood up. She tapped her wine glass until the whole restaurant looked our way. "I have an announcement," she beamed. "I know tonight is about Rachel, but I just can't keep it in any longer. I've decided to sell the house and move to a condo in the city. I'm finally starting my second act." She spent the next 40 minutes talking about floor plans and marble countertops. Every time someone tried to ask me about the wedding date, she would interrupt to ask their opinion on kitchen tiles. By the end of the night, Mark's parents knew more about her future condo than they did about our wedding. She had successfully sucked the air out of the room until I felt like a guest at her party. I tried to keep our wedding guest list small and private. We had a specific vision for a peaceful, intimate day. I explicitly told my mother not to post anything about the venue or the date on social media because I didn't want uninvited distant relatives showing up. The next morning, I woke up to 40 notifications. She had posted a countdown to the big day on Facebook, tagging the venue, the caterer, and even the time of the ceremony. "I just couldn't contain my excitement," she told me when I confronted her. "Why are you being so secretive? Are you ashamed of your family?" Because of that post, I spent 3 weeks dealing with calls from angry great aunts I hadn't seen in a decade. I was stressed, exhausted, and losing sleep. That's when she stepped in to help. The most calculated move happened during the dress shopping phase. We went to a boutique downtown. I found it, my dream dress. Oh, it was $5,800. It had intricate lace, a long train, and it made me feel like royalty. While I was paying the deposit, my mother found a gown for herself. It was a beautiful, elegant silver dress with a high neckline. It was sophisticated, and most importantly, it was definitely not white. "I love this, Rachel," she said, holding it up. "It'll look so good next to you in the photos. Very mother of the bride, don't you think?" I was so happy, I thought, finally, she's playing her part. I was so relieved that I offered to pay for it right then and there. I handed over $400 of my own money. I saw the salesperson put the silver dress in a garment bag. I saw my mother take it. I felt like we had finally turned a corner. I felt safe. In the 3 months leading up to the wedding, the mask started to slip again, but in smaller, sharper ways. And she would call me at 11 p.m. to tell me that my flowers looked a bit cheap, or that she'd heard Mark's mother was complaining about the food, which wasn't true. Every time I got excited about a detail, she would find a way to poke a hole in it. "White is a very difficult color for you, Rachel," she said during my final fitting. "It washes you out. Maybe we should have gone with a cream, but it's too late now, I suppose." She would watch me look at myself in the mirror, and instead of saying I looked beautiful, she would adjust her own hair and say, "I hope people don't think I'm your sister on the wedding day. That would be so embarrassing for both of us." I should have seen it then. The way her eyes narrowed when the seamstress complimented my figure. The way she kept touching the lace on my train, her fingers lingering a little too long on the delicate fabric. I thought she was just being difficult. I thought she was just jealous of the youth I had and the future I was building. I didn't realize she was actually mourning the fact that she wouldn't be the most important person in the room for 8 hours. I was naive. I thought the $400 silver dress was sitting in her closet, waiting for the big day. I thought we were on the same team. But Linda doesn't play for teams. She only plays for herself. While I was busy dreaming about my walk down the aisle, she was busy visiting a different bridal shop, showing them a photo of my dress and asking, "Can you find me something exactly like this in pure white?" She wasn't preparing to be the mother of the bride. She was preparing to be the other bride. And she was making sure she had a backup plan in case her dress wasn't enough to steal the show. She was making sure she had a glass of red wine ready. The morning of my wedding was perfect until the door to the bridal suite swung open. The room was filled with the smell of hairspray and expensive perfume. My bridesmaids were laughing, sipping champagne in their matching silk robes. I was sitting in the center chair, getting the final touches on my makeup. I felt like I was finally in a fairy tale. Then my mother walked in. The laughter in the room didn't just stop. It died. I looked in the mirror and felt my heart drop into my stomach. My hands started to shake so hard I had to grip the armrests of the chair. She wasn't wearing the silver dress I bought her. She was wearing a floor-length lace gown in a shade of white so bright it made my eyes ache. The style was a mirror image of mine. The same sleeves, the same neckline, the same lace pattern. "Mom," I whispered. My voice felt like it was coming from a mile away. "What are you wearing?" She did a little spin, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Do you like it?" I decided the silver was too dull. I needed something with a bit more life. My maid of honor, Sarah, stepped forward. Her face was red with anger. "Linda, you're wearing a wedding dress. You need to go home and change, now." My mother's face changed in an instant. The smile vanished, and her eyes welled up with practiced tears. "Why is everyone attacking me? I just wanted to look nice for my daughter. I didn't realize having good taste was a crime." As the argument escalated, my photographer, a guy named James who'd seen everything in his career, pulled me into the hallway. He looked pale. "Rachel," he whispered. "I saw her in the parking lot earlier. She was switching her bags. She didn't just decide this morning, she planned this." I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't a snap, it was a cold, hard freeze. I realized in that hallway that my mother didn't love me. She loved the idea of me being beneath her. I walked back into the room to end the fight. I was going to tell her to leave, but she was faster. She was standing by the refreshment table, holding a full glass of Cabernet. As I approached, she didn't move away. She stepped toward me. She looked me straight in the eye, not with sadness, but with a terrifying, calm focus. "You always did think you were the star of the show, Rachel," she said. Then, here she tilted her hand. I watched the red wine pour out of the glass. It hit the white lace of my chest and stomach like a bucket of blood. The heat of the liquid soaked through to my skin, but I felt ice cold. She didn't stop until the glass was empty. She looked at the massive, dripping stain, then looked back at me and laughed. "Now we're both stained brides. At least now people will have something to talk about." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, feeling the wet weight of my ruined dream against my skin. Something inside me finally clicked. The good daughter died in that suite, and a stranger took her place. The 11 months that followed my wedding weren't a honeymoon. They were a slow, agonizing funeral for my happiness. I spent my wedding day draped in a ruined dress, smelling like sour grapes and humiliation. Every time I looked at Mark during our vows, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw the reflection of the red stain in his eyes. He tried to be supportive, but the shadow of my mother hung over us like a ghost. The photos were a nightmare. I had to pay James, the photographer, an extra $2,000 just to use advanced Photoshop to clean my dress in every single shot. It took him 4 months to deliver them. When I finally saw the digital files, I didn't feel happy. I felt like I was looking at a lie. The woman in the photos looked like a happy bride, but I knew that under that digital white silk there was a permanent scar. My mother didn't apologize, not once. In fact, she spent the next year telling the family that I was the one who was unstable on my wedding day. "Rachel just had a breakdown," she'd tell my aunts over coffee. She was so stressed she bumped into me and spilled my wine. I tried to help her, but you know how she gets. So dramatic. The lies started to eat at my marriage. Mark wanted me to go no contact. He wanted us to move to another state, but I was still trapped in the good daughter cycle. I kept trying to fix things. I kept inviting her over, hoping she'd finally say she was sorry. Every visit ended in a fight between me and Mark. "She ruined our wedding, Rachel," he shouted one night. "And you're acting like she just spilled some salt. She destroyed your dress on purpose." "I know she did," I screamed back. "But what do you want me to do? She's my mother." That was the problem. I was choosing a woman who hated me over a man who loved me. By the 10th month, the light in Mark's eyes when he looked at me had gone out. We were exhausted. We were broken. When he packed his bags last month, I didn't even fight him. I just sat on the floor and watched him leave. I had lost my husband. I had lost my $5,800 dress. I had lost my dignity. I spent 3 days in the dark, staring at the wall. That's when I realized that as long as I kept my mother's secrets, I was helping her kill me. I needed the truth to be louder than her lies. I called James, the photographer. "James," I said, my voice raspy from crying. "You told me on the wedding day that you saw her bag. You said your camera was rolling. Do you have it?" There was a long silence on the other end. "I've been waiting for this call, Rachel. I never deleted it. I couldn't. It was the most cold-blooded thing I've ever caught on a lens." An hour later, an email popped up in my inbox. I opened the file, and there it was. The video wasn't just a clip. It was a confession. James had been testing his video settings for the getting ready montage. The camera was tucked on a shelf, capturing a wide angle of the refreshment table. I watched as my mother walked over to the table. She wasn't looking at the wine. She was looking at me through the reflection in a mirror. She picked up the glass. She didn't stumble. She didn't trip. She waited until I was exactly 3 feet away. Then, with a look of pure, concentrated malice, she leaned forward and poured. But the worst part wasn't the pour. It was what happened after. The video showed her stepping back, checking her own white dress to make sure no droplets had splashed back on her, and then she did a little victory shimmy. She was proud of herself. I watched that video 50 times. Each time, why, a layer of my heart turned to stone. The plan started to form when I heard about the big family Christmas my Aunt Margaret was hosting. 22 people, the entire bloodline. My mother had been bragging on Facebook for weeks that she was going to wear her signature white because it made her look youthful and pure. I didn't block her. I didn't yell at her. I did the opposite. I sent her a text. "Mom, I've been thinking, you're right. Life is too short to be bitter. Let's make this Christmas special. I have a surprise for the whole family." She replied within seconds. "Finally, I knew you'd come around, honey. I'm so glad you're learning to forgive. See you at Margaret's." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I didn't just have the video, I had the receipts. I went into my records and printed out the $5,800 invoice for my dress. Boy, I printed the $400 receipt for the silver dress I bought her. I printed the $2,000 bill for the Photoshop rescue. I put them all into a digital slideshow. I labeled the folder, "The Cost of a Mother's Love." I practiced my speech in the mirror. I didn't want to be the bitter divorcee she was telling everyone I was. I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to be the one who finally turned the lights on so the cockroaches had nowhere to hide. I called my best friend, Sarah. "I need you to be there. I need someone to hold my hand when the screen goes black." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," she said. "Are you sure about this, Rachel? There's no coming back from this." "I don't want to come back," I said. "I want to be free." The night before Christmas, I couldn't sleep. I felt a strange mix of terror and peace. For 10 years, well, I had been carrying the weight of her accidents. I had been the one feeling guilty for her crimes. No more. I looked at my divorce papers sitting on the nightstand. They were the price I paid for her attention. I looked at the video file on my thumb drive. That was the receipt. Tomorrow, the whole family would sit down for ham and mashed potatoes. They would listen to Linda tell her stories about how she was the victim of my moods. They would watch her twirl in her white dress, pretending to be an angel. And then, I was going to give her exactly what she always wanted. I was going to make sure every single eye in the room was on her. But for the first time in her life, she was going to hate the way they were looking. I checked the thumb drive one last time. The file played perfectly. The image of the red wine hitting my chest was clear, sharp, and undeniable. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "I hope white is still your favorite color after tonight." Aunt Margaret's house felt like a pressure cooker. The air was thick with the smell of roasted ham, pine needles, and the fake laughter of 22 people trying to pretend we were a happy family. I arrived late. I wanted everyone to be seated. I wanted the audience ready. When I walked into the living room, I saw her. My mother was standing by the fireplace, a glass of white wine in her hand. She was wearing it, the white lace wedding-style gown. In the warm glow of the Christmas lights, she looked absurd. A 50-year-old woman dressed like a runaway bride at a family dinner. "Rachel, you made it," she chirped, loud enough for the whole room to hear. She walked over and tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "Oh, still a bit prickly." "It's okay, everyone. We're giving her grace. Divorce is so hard on the ego." A few of my cousins looked down at their plates, uncomfortable. My Aunt Margaret sighed. My grandmother just shook her head. They had heard this narrative for weeks, that I was the bitter, broken daughter, and Linda was the long-suffering saint. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. My voice was calm. It was the kind of calm that comes right before a storm hits. "In fact, I'm better than ever. I brought that surprise I told you about." "Oh, wonderful!" She clapped her hands. "Is it a slideshow of our trip to the lake? Or maybe some old family photos?" "Something like that," I said. I walked over to the 65-inch TV mounted above the sideboard. Well, my hands were steady as I plugged my phone into the HDMI port. I could feel my heart thumping against my ribs, but my face was a mask of stone. "Everyone," I said, tapping a spoon against my water glass. The room went quiet. "Before we eat, I wanted to share something. My mother has spent a lot of time this year talking about my wedding day. She's told a lot of stories about how stressful it was and how I accidentally ruined my own dress." My mother's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She tightened her grip on her wine glass. "Rachel, honey, we don't need to bring up the past. It's Christmas." "I think we do," I continued, ignoring her, "because today Mom is wearing her signature white dress again, and it reminded me of the day she first wore it, the day she decided that my wedding wasn't about a marriage, but about a performance." I hit play. The screen flickered to life. It was a high-definition, wide-angle shot of the bridal suite. You could see the champagne on the table, you could see my bridesmaids in the background, and there, in the center, was me. I looked so happy. I looked so full of hope. Then, Linda entered the frame. The family leaned in. I heard my Uncle David mutter, "Is that a wedding dress she's wearing?" On the screen, the confrontation began. The room in Margaret's house went silent, the kind of silence where you can hear the clock ticking in the hallway. We watched as the maid of honor asked her to change. We watched Linda's fake tears. Then came the moment. The camera angle was perfect. It caught the exact second Linda's expression changed from victim to predator. The screen showed her eyes locking onto mine. Or it showed her hand reaching for the glass. And then, the pour. In slow motion, the red wine cascaded over my white lace. On the 65-inch screen, the stain looked massive. It looked violent. The sound of the wine splashing against the fabric was picked up by the microphone. Splash! The room erupted in a collective gasp. My Aunt Margaret put her hand over her mouth. My grandmother's jaw literally dropped, but I wasn't finished. I swiped to the next slide. Image. The receipt. $5,800. Rachel's dress. Image. The receipt. $400. Linda's silver dress, paid by Rachel. Image, the invoice, $2,000. Photoshop restoration. "She didn't just ruin a dress," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "She sabotaged my marriage before it even started. She spent $400 of my money to buy a silver dress she never intended to wear. But she bought a white one in secret because she couldn't stand the thought of me having one day where she wasn't the center of attention." I turned to look at my mother. Her face was no longer youthful and pure. It was a sickly shade of gray. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. You're lying!" she finally shrieked. Her voice was thin and desperate. "That video is edited! You're just a bitter divorcee trying to ruin my reputation." "The camera doesn't lie, Linda," my Aunt Margaret said. Her voice was trembling with rage. She stood up from the table. "I was there. I heard you tell me it was an accident. I watched you cry about how Rachel was abusing you." "I was!" Linda screamed, looking around the room for an ally. She found none. "She's always been jealous of me. She's trying to turn you all against me." "No." "Mom," I said, stepping closer to her. "I'm just finally letting everyone see you. The real you. The one who pours wine on her daughter's dreams because she's too small to let anyone else shine." My grandmother, the matriarch of the family, stood up slowly. She didn't look at me. She looked at her daughter. Linda, she said, her voice shaking with disgust. Get out of this house. Mama, wait. I said get out, my grandmother repeated, and take that ridiculous dress with you. You are a stain on this family. My mother looked around the room one last time. 22 people were staring at her, not with admiration, not with the attention she craved. They were looking at her like she was a bug they wanted to squash. She didn't leave with dignity. She grabbed her purse, knocked over a chair, and screamed that we were all ungrateful losers as she slammed the front door. The silence that followed was heavy, but for the first time in 10 years, it didn't feel suffocating. I sat down at the table. My hands were finally, truly still. The sound of the front door slamming was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It echoed through Aunt Margaret's hallway and seemed to vibrate in the very center of my chest. For a moment, nobody moved. The video was still frozen on the big screen. A giant, unmoving image of red wine suspended in midair. I reached out and turned the TV off. The room plunged back into the soft, warm glow of the Christmas tree, but the atmosphere had changed forever. Aunt Margaret was the first to speak. She walked over to me and pulled me into a hug. She didn't say it's okay because it wasn't. She just held me. One by one, the others stood up. My cousins, the ones who had listened to my mother's lies for months, came over with tears in their eyes. Rachel, I am so sorry, my cousin Chloe whispered. She told us you had a mental breakdown. She told us you threw the wine at her and then blamed her to cover it up. We actually felt sorry for her. I know, I said. That was the point. The dinner that followed was the quietest Christmas we had ever had. There was no loud storytelling, no one competing for the spotlight. Instead, there was a lot of honesty. As the night went on, the Linda stories started to come out. My Uncle David admitted she had tried to sabotage his promotion 5 years ago by calling his boss with concerns about his drinking, which was non-existent. But my grandmother confessed that Linda had been stealing small pieces of jewelry from her for years, always blaming the cleaning staff. The mask hadn't just slipped, it had been shattered. I left Margaret's house at 10 p.m. The air was cold and crisp. As I walked to my car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. It was the weight of the good daughter. I didn't have to protect her anymore. I didn't have to carry her secrets. I was light. The fallout began the next morning. My phone was a war zone. My mother had sent 34 text messages between midnight and 6 a.m. They followed the classic pattern. First, the anger. How dare you humiliate me in my own family? You are a monster. Then, the victimhood. I'm sitting here alone on Christmas. I hope you're happy. I might as well not be alive. Finally, the gaslighting. The video was blurry. People saw what they wanted to see. I was trying to save you from a bad marriage, and you know it. I didn't reply to a single one. I didn't even feel the urge to defend myself. I just opened her contact, hit block, and watched her name disappear from my list. A week later, I heard from Chloe. She told me that 4 of our cousins had blocked Linda too. My grandmother had changed the locks on her house and told my mother that she was no longer welcome at Sunday dinners until she sought professional psychiatric help. My mother, true to form, chose her pride over her family. She sent out a mass email, which most people didn't even open, claiming she was going on a spiritual retreat to escape our toxic energy. In reality, Sarah told me she saw her at the grocery store a few days ago. She was wearing a different white dress. She was standing in the checkout line, trying to start a conversation with the cashier about how jealous people try to bring down successful women. She was alone. She had her signature color, but she had nobody left to show it to. As for me, the transition wasn't easy. I spent a lot of time in therapy. I had to grieve twice, once for the marriage I lost, and once for the mother I never truly had. My therapist told me something that stayed with me. You didn't ruin your wedding, Rachel. You just had the misfortune of being the lead actress in someone else's play. Now the play is over. I decided to do one last thing to close the chapter. I went to the storage unit where I had kept my wedding dress. I hadn't looked at it since the divorce was finalized. I pulled it out of the garment bag. The red stain had faded to a dull brownish purple. It looked ugly. It looked like a scar. I took it to a local artist who specialized in trash the dress projects. I don't want to destroy it, I told her. I want you to change it. 2 weeks later, she brought it back. She had dyed the entire dress a deep, midnight navy blue. The lace was still there, the train was still there, but the stain was gone, absorbed into a color that was strong, dark, and beautiful. It didn't look like a wedding dress anymore. It looked like an evening gown. It looked like something a woman wears when she's ready to conquer the world. I wore that blue dress to a New Year's Eve party with Sarah and some old friends. I didn't look for cameras. When I didn't worry about spills, I just danced. I realized that my mother had been right about one thing. We were both stained. But a stain doesn't have to be the end of the story. You can scrub it, you can hide it, or you can do what I did. You can use it to create something completely new. My marriage ended, and that's sad. But the divorce gave me back my voice. My mother is gone from my life, and that's a tragedy. But her absence gave me back my peace. People always think revenge is about a big explosion. They think it's about the video on the TV or the screaming match in the hallway. And while that felt good, that wasn't the real revenge. The real revenge is the silence. It's the fact that I don't know what she's doing today. I don't know what she's wearing. I don't know who she's lying to. And for the first time in 26 years, I don't care. I'm finally starting my life over. My apartment is quiet. My bank account is my own. My future is wide open. And the best part? My wardrobe is full of color now. Greens, blues, yellows, and blacks. I kept one white shirt just to remind myself that I can wear it whenever I want, and nobody is going to pour anything on it. So if you're sitting there today, protecting someone who is hurting you, let me ask you this. How much is their secret worth to you? Is it worth your wedding day? Is it worth your marriage? Is it worth your sanity? Because the truth won't just set you free, it will give you your life back. And trust me, once you're standing in the light, you'll realize that the person trying to dim your glow was never that bright to begin with. I am Rachel. I am 26 years old, and I am finally beautifully stain-free.